Welcome to the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions, now in its 23rd season. Our panel features a longtime Penn State media and NitWits tag team, Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of Lions 247 with Fight on State. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ's Jack Washer, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Encompass Health, a higher level of care. Encompass Healthcare. Ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing and heating and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Freedom RV, Freedom RV Rentals, your best vacation ever. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Kogan Electric, lighting the way for you. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
Welcome to Nittany Nation Overtime.
And welcome into Nittany Nation Overtime. I am Jack Washer. Let's meet the panel for tonight's show. From left to right on your TV screen, Mark Brennan from FightOnState.com and Lions 247, Neil Rudell from the Altoona Mirror, and Shane McGregor, former Penn State quarterback and current Central Cambria head football coach. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. Well, as our longtime scribe Neil Rudell says, don't bury the lead. Penn State will not be going to a bowl game this year. They declined an invitation. Neil, were you surprised by this move from the program?
Well, in one way, a lot of the players leading up to the game had indicated, the seniors, the leaders, that they would play. They seemed like they wanted to stay together. But I think they were just sort of saying the right things in leading up to the last game. It doesn't overly surprise me because, you know, you're talking about them having to go in some faraway place, probably, again, without fans and families and who knows, all the uncertainty in trading it for a month off. And, you know, I don't know that it was going to get a whole lot better than it got yesterday and this last month. So, no, I'm not really surprised.
Yeah, from a media perspective, last year at the Cotton Bowl, we had the wall of snacks in the hospitality suite. This year, I think it would have been the wall of condiments in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. But listen, I think you really have to look at what these players have gone through. Yeah, everybody in the nation has gone through a lot of the same things. But the one thing for Penn State, you look at the job they did with the COVID and avoiding it, and going above and beyond and taking every single measure. Not everybody did that. So what these players had to go through with all that, if their vote was to not go to a bowl, completely respect that. Let them go have some time with the family, look ahead to next year.
Shane, what do you think from a player's perspective? You know, I'm going to let you rewind your brain back about 8 years. I know it was a little different. You know, you guys were dealing with sanctions and whatnot, and this is COVID, so this probably will never happen again. But what is that conversation like, you think, inside that locker room?
It's definitely an interesting one. And I thought that was something that you know, I really looked at with intrigue last night. From a player and then now a coach's standpoint, you treat games as almost like sacred experiences, things that you only get so many of, no matter how many levels of football you play. But at the same time, with what these guys have been through, and from a player's point of view, I mean, these guys, football is not just a fall sport. You know, in Division I at Penn State, it is a year-round sport. So they've been there through the summer, through the fall. There was no Thanksgiving break. They've had this uncertainty all the way through. And then finally, honestly, sometimes you just want to go home and you want to spend some time with your family. You want to end on that high note, which they got. So seeing them finally make this decision, I could definitely see it from a player's point of view and student-athlete-wise. I think definitely it could be a good one.
Mark, Neil, do you think, as we've talked with Franklin year or week after week, and he talks about how much he misses his family, do you think that played any sort of factor into the players deciding not to go to a bowl, just because he's talked about it so openly? And yes, the players haven't seen their families, but literally Coach Franklin's family has been away from him, and all the other coaches' families, I believe, are in State College or the surrounding area. So do you think that kind of played into anything when they kind of made this decision?
Do I think he overtly said to the players, hey, please help me out? No, I don't. But I think those players, and I talked to a couple of them after the game yesterday, and they definitely get, Lamont Wade said, Lamont Wade has a little one of his own, and he said he definitely understood how difficult that was for Franklin. So I don't think that he went and politicked, but I would imagine, they care for their head coach and they knew what he was going through. And listen, he's in a difficult situation. When you have a daughter who has that sort of illness or disease, you got to do everything you can to protect her, and to be away had to be difficult. So it's good for him that he's able to get back and see them.
Yeah, and then Brent Pry had mentioned that his family, since Thanksgiving, has not been there. So I think there were a lot of moving parts. I do think going forward that this is something that they're going to have to resolve. James is going to have to get this thing resolved, over the off season here, because it clearly was distracting him. He admitted that early on, and so hopefully that can be really one of the off season priorities. He seemed optimistic of the support, both in terms of medical and also university flexibility that he's going to need over the next few months.
Yeah, to be clear, the most important thing is keeping his daughter safe. That's more important than winning football games. That's more important than anything else. Yeah, I know that people love winning football games, but when you have a kid who's dealing with a difficult situation, let's keep her safe and then worry about football games.
All right, coming up next, we take a look back at the shellacking put on the Fighting Illini, plus a career day for one Penn State wide receiver. That's next.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Encompass Health, a higher level of care. Encompass Healthcare. Ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back to the show. Let's actually get into the game yesterday. Penn State shellacks Illinois 56-21, although the first quarter we thought we were in for a nice little shootout and whatnot. But Jahan Dotson, what a game and what a year he's had. Mark, Brennan, we knew he had to take over for KJ Hamler, but I didn't see this kind of step from Dotson at all.
No, I thought he was going to be good. I did not realize he was going to be this good. And I think, unfortunately for him, Penn State's struggles at the beginning of the year took a lot of the focus off of him. But this is a guy who had a dominant game against the Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year in Sean Wade against Ohio State, and somehow only ends up third team all Big Ten. That to me is kind of ridiculous. But he emerged as a leader. He emerged as a steadying force. And Shane, you may be able to address this, but it's one thing for a quarterback to be that steadying force or a running back, but for a receiver to end up doing that for a team throughout the year when they lost everybody they lost, I think that was a big thing.
We had several guys that I think of as being like steadying forces from the receiving end, guys that could really be counted on. You remember how Derek Moy used to play? Yep. And it honestly reminded me a lot of the emergence of Allen Robinson. Yep. Whenever he really came into his own that one year, and no one really kind of saw it coming, but then he really stepped up and became what he became. I'm not saying Dotson's on that level quite yet, but the similarities I think definitely exist.
Yeah, I thought he was terrific. The thing I liked about him and them these last couple games is they started taking more chances on special teams, unleashing his speed. They were playing so conservatively and analytically driven the first few games, and you saw with Wade yesterday busting the 100-yard. Dodson, 2 big punt returns in the last 2 weeks, and this offense needed that all year, and I think started finally getting that. And I think a lot of that was Dotson.
Outside of that really first quarter, the defense really shut down Illinois. And honestly, I only counted as 14 points because, Penn State turned it over inside the red zone. What are you guys' thoughts on the defense, just kind of as a whole? It's been like we talked about it before. They take a while to wake up, but when they do wake up, it's a very scary unit, and it's one that doesn't yield a lot of points.
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't have these poor single quarters in these last couple of games, I mean, against Michigan State, it was the second quarter. Against Illinois, it's the first quarter. I mean, you have to give them credit for pushing the right buttons, but I would say on the other side of it, listen, they've lost players too to illness and to injury, I'm sorry. But if you do that against the better teams in the Big Ten, it could be a much different story. You could be in a much bigger hole. But to Brent Pry's credit, he did push the right buttons. In the second half of both games, they dominated.
Yeah, we're going to have a postseason show where we drill down a little further on what some of the things that need addressed in the offseason. And I think clearly that's one of them. It was uneven a lot of the year. They showed flashes, a lot of young players, and I think that's the upside. There's a lot of guys that are returning that really got their feet wet. But I think that body of work, it needs more consistency.
Shane, as a quarterback, what do you think of Sean Clifford's turnaround, where he comes in, he's got all this momentum, and then all of a sudden it looks like he has the yips, and he gets benched. Granted, it was only for 2.5 quarters, but nonetheless, he had that job taken away from him, gets it back, and really had a great rest of 2020 and whatnot. What goes into a quarterback's psyche when you get benched like that, and what did you see kind of in the second half of the season that allowed him to have this success?
I mean, coming from a kind of a sympathetic point of view as far as Clifford goes, when you're the quarterback of a team, you are the linchpin, you are the main flashpoint for a lot of stuff that's going on. You don't play quarterback in a vacuum. All right, you are at the epicenter of this ecosystem of a football team. So when you got guys missing on defense, you lose your go-to running back, both of them actually within the first week, and also you're breaking in time with a new OC. I mean, that's going to take some things to do. Also, too, I think people often don't talk much about the difference in the structure of the season. Rarely ever are you going to play the top 2 teams that you're going to face right off the bat. You might face a 1AA team or a nice little warm-up game that you can get your feet wet a little bit, get things used to. So what I really liked about Clifford, though, is as he went further on, it didn't look like there was any sort of immaturity, no negativity as he got benched, because you really reveal your character whenever you're going through some adverse times. So for him to do that and then finally get into a spot where he was playing well down the stretch, I think that gives some momentum to what started as not a very good season.
I told you guys he was going to do a good job. We got younger, he's more handsome. We should have him in.
No,
getting more handsome wasn't much of a challenge.
The bar was very, very low in terms of, no offense to our other guests and whatnot. But no, but I want to pick up more on that, Shane. Like, do you think it helps a quarterback where, I'm not saying he didn't win the job in 2019, but like when Tommy Stevens leaves, it's pretty much like, unless Clifford forgets how to play football, he's going to win that job. So like kind of almost nice little kick in the butt and whatnot for Franklin. Do players and specifically quarterbacks, do they need that sometimes when it's not like they don't have that hunger, but they kind of need that motivation put back into them?
Oh, it brings the best out of you. It brings the best out of you when you have that kind of, you're all together, you're in that quarterback room all the time, but a healthy sense of competition, if handled well, can make people play better. And you saw with him, I thought he handled it well going through that. He had his own sets of errors. I think you could see some fundamental breakdowns, whether it was decision making and also even just fundamentally getting the ball there in some stances. Didn't get well, but I thought last night was a microcosm of doing really well as far as distributing the ball. Almost like a point guard does, as far as getting it to the right guys in the right time. Nothing, too earth-shattering or life-changing, but get it to your playmakers and let them do their thing.
You know what else we saw, though? And we rarely see displays of emotion from James Franklin on the sideline. But when Clifford fumbled, Franklin, I don't know if it showed up on TV as much as it did there in the stadium, Franklin went after him. Mm-hmm. And he went after Levis after a poor decision later. And what is that telling you? That they realize how important this turnover situation is. I mean, I don't want to say it was that simple, but it really was kind of that simple. So the fact that Franklin was really laying into him, even after he'd been playing well, over that turnover tells you something.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he coached them hard, and he was coaching them for next year. Because both these guys are presumably still going to be in the mix of where it's going. You open up with Wisconsin, and then you have Auburn in the first 3 games. And I think Ball State might be the second game, and they won a championship. So I think he was coaching them toward next year.
All right, coming up next, we dive into a little, we tie up some loose ends, I should say. Did the College Football Playoff Committee get it right? And what's our guest been up to since leaving Happy Valley? All that next.
The NitWits are brought to you by Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing and heating and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Freedom RV Rentals, your best vacation ever. By RE/MAX Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back to the show. We want to check in with our guests right now. As someone who co-hosts SportsBeat, I know Shane McGregor is always at Central Cambria, but what have you been up to? How's the program doing, and how was it this year in COVID times? A little different on the high school end than it is at a Division I powerhouse like Penn State in terms of resources and whatnot.
I've been okay. I mean, it's definitely been a season that you're never going to forget. It was something that you had to deal with the whole way through. All these different challenges to kind of navigate, whether we were even going to play at all, and then having games canceled. So we had a good season. We went through some rough runs the last few, but had our first winning season in a long time, and then navigating that. And also, I'm a 9th grade English teacher there at the high school as well. So navigating the whole virtual school thing has been interesting. That's for sure.
Well, it's good to see you back in the area, Shane.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, guys. Let's put on our hot take hats. If you've been living on the internet, you've seen there's been a lot of anger over, the playoff, and it's not college football without a little controversy and whatnot. So did the committee get it right with the 4 teams? Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State. Are those the best 4 teams in college football?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Texas A&M could have had an argument, but they were pretty much, blown out in a game against the best opponent that they faced. Notre Dame, on the other hand, actually beat Clemson, albeit without Trevor Lawrence, and then was kind of blown out as well. So I think they had that slight edge. Ohio State, I was thoroughly unimpressed with Ohio State against Northwestern. I thought Ohio State looked great against Penn State in some of those games early in the year. Was surprised about Justin Fields, but honestly, I don't know that they could have done a better job of getting 4 teams in this season.
Yeah, I know a lot of people talk, and to have an 8-team field would create more interest. It would give the Cincinnatis of the world an opportunity. It does come off like an old boys club that they're not going to let the outliers in. But really, there's 2 teams out there that would be a national championship game. We'll see. Notre Dame's a 20-point underdog or close. We'll see if Ohio State can look better. They certainly didn't yesterday. Now they're going to try to doctor the rules to get Olave back sooner if they can through the COVID protocol. So I don't know. If Ohio State's playing their best, they can play with anybody. So we'll see.
I think the interesting thing looking forward too is what is best. Can we define that? Because is that the eyeball? What's the eyeball test? What is the best team? Is it the most deserving team, like on paper, like what they've done, or like how do we define that? I think going forward, that's going to be the main question as far as trying to make this thing a little better.
Shane, do you think if they do expand to 8 teams, do you think from a player's perspective, like everyone's thinking, all right, you lose 1 game, our season's done, or you lose 2 games, but with 8. There's a chance that now you can get in, or do you think that kind of waters down the regular season where people always say college football is the best regular season in all sports because every game matters?
Well, I think it's also kind of the college football season still, once we went to the mega conferences several years ago, you kind of cheapen or you at least complicate conference title games, the regular season. You don't play everybody in your own conference, okay? So how can you get a true champion? All of that kind of all together, and then throw in all of the complications from COVID all of this year. It's made for a big, I don't know, I won't say mess, but definitely a complicated situation.
Your guys' thoughts on Brett Bielema, who is now back in the Big Ten after being at Wisconsin for a while, went to Arkansas, did not have much success, been with the Giants, but now back in the Big Ten West in Champaign. He was actually at the game yesterday, believe it or not. Neil, your initial thoughts on Bielema?
Well, I thought they should have waited a week on Lovey, just to give him the dignity of ending the season. But and I think Bielema still would have been there, but I think he's a good hire. He had a lot of success at Wisconsin. He's got Big Ten experience. He's an Illinois native. He's a rock'em sock'em type of guy, and I think Illinois got better with its hiring.
They couldn't wait a week on Lovey because signing day was last Wednesday, and if you sign all those kids and then fire your coach 5 days later, That, to me, that doesn't work. I know I look at things from a recruiting perspective. And speaking of which, I'm anxious to see how Bielema is able to recruit at Illinois. I think that there's a big difference between recruiting at Wisconsin, which, as crazy as it may sound, I think when you have that set traditional program, much easier to recruit there than at Illinois.
Mark, you brought up recruiting. I want to get your quick thoughts. The recruiting class, I don't think people are going to say it's Penn State's best recruiting class. They had the transfer portal, but overall, like at least recruiting in the state, I think everybody across the board feels that they did not do a great job in this cycle. I don't know what it's looking like for next year, but how would you assess how they did this with the recruiting?
Yeah, including them. I mean, you have to recruit better in Pennsylvania. You have to be able to get the Rucci kid, who's kind of a legacy. Yeah. You have to be able to get the kid from Gateway. But what I will say about them is that they had no decommitments from last March through their signing class. So for that to happen after an 0-5 start, listen, not a great class, but we have at 24/7 ranked number 21, a good class. It wasn't a big numbers year for them. To not lose anybody, I think was a positive.
All right, coming up next, we crown our Nitwit of the Year, and it came down to one play. We'll talk about that next.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Dorman's Jewelry. The answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage. No matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Kogan Electric. Lighting the way for you. By Lions 247 with Fight on State. Your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
And welcome back. Let's wrap things up. And since Penn State won't be playing in a bowl game this year, our Nitwit of the Year standings are now final. And believe it or not, the guest gets the W, not the deflated ball. Sorry, Mark, you do not get the win. Neil and I in the cellar just dealing with
one guest was representing me, I'll have you know. Tyler Donahue.
That's very true.
Lions 247.
What are you saying? The Nitwit of the Year standings are they're under protest.
No, I'm not protesting. We're good giving it to the
Congratulations to all our guests.
Yes, but Shane, you actually get to accept the award even though you did not.
It's hard to accept. Yes.
You did. So we are going to wrap up the show next week. We'll do a nice season in review on Sunday, December 27th and whatnot. But your guys' kind of just final thoughts on the season. Not like I said, we're going to have that wrap up, but like just quick thoughts on what we saw. 4-5 Penn State. They end the season with 4 straight wins. 30 seconds each. Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think they have a lot to be proud of. Obviously, a difficult start. Nothing to be happy about with that, but that the team stayed together, that the coaches stayed together, that everybody they handled the COVID thing right. I think all those things. That's not what Penn State fans expect overall, but to come out of that season with momentum heading into next year, I think is a positive.
Yeah, I agree. I think they showed a lot of leadership and character. I do want to throw in that Pat Freiermuth declared for the NFL today, so we'll see how that shakes out this week. But that was something that I think was expected. Hey, to end of the season with 4 in a row, I think they'll carry some good feeling into the offseason, almost as if they went and won a bowl game.
Shane, as you kind of look at next year's team, since you probably will not be on the show next week, what do you see in terms of this momentum? You can talk about the what and whatnot, but what do you see going into next year?
I think it can be huge. Whenever you see a lot of Penn State teams have taken momentum and run it through into good off seasons, and who knows what the off season is going to look like this year. Who knows who's going to be playing where next year. But I think could be something definitely look forward. As far as navigating the current climate, I thought they did really well with it. They played all the games, and that's the most baseline of everything. And then just seeing how it goes forward is going to be definitely an interesting thing.
All right, that is our show. We'll see you next week as we wrap up the season.
The Nitwits have been brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. By Encompass Health, a higher level of care. Encompass Healthcare. Ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, carpet cleaning, and rug cleaning. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, providing friendly, family-focused orthodontic care in Altoona, Bedford, and Huntington. By Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing and heating and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Freedom RV, Freedom RV Rentals, your best vacation ever. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By Dorman's Jewelry, the answer is always Dorman's. By Star Beverage, no matter what type of weather, we are a convenient drive-through one-stop beer store. By Kogan Electric, lighting the way for you. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Monday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.